In the darkest days of the Pacific War, when defeat seemed only a matter of time, one commander proposed a maneuver so reckless that even his own superiors whispered the word, a suicide. The year was 1944, and the vast ocean had become a graveyard of steel. Aircraft carriers ruled the waves, submarines prowled beneath them, and radar had transformed night into a battlefield of invisible signals. Yet this officer believed the key to victory was not in caution, but in shock. He argued that surprise, violent, overwhelming, and immediate, could break a fleet before it even realized it was under attack. The Admiralty scoffed. Intelligence reports showed the enemy formation heavily escorted, layered with destroyers and bristling anti-aircraft guns. To charge straight into such a force seemed madness, but the commander insisted that speed, darkness, and precise coordination would turn risk into advantage. He had studied weather patterns, moon cycles, and the enemy's standard operating procedures. He knew exactly when complacency would settle in, when watches grew tired and radar operators grew bored. His gamble was simple: strike so fast that panic would multiply the damage. If he failed, his ships would vanish in minutes. If he succeeded, the balance of power in that region would shift overnight. What followed would silence every critic who had laughed at his plan. The fleet he commanded was not large, nor was it the pride of his nation's navy. It consisted of aging cruisers, a handful of destroyers, and torpedo boats that had seen better days. Their paint was worn, their hulls scarred by previous engagements. Against them stood a formidable enemy convoy. Transports loaded with supplies guarded by modern warships equipped with advanced radar and heavier guns. Traditional doctrine dictated cautious engagement, shadow the convoy, call in air support, or wait for daylight reinforcements. But this commander rejected doctrine. He understood that daylight meant exposure. Air superiority belonged to the enemy. Any prolonged exchange would invite devastating retaliation from above. Instead, he devised a nighttime penetration attack. He would slip between patrol patterns, close the distance to near point-blank range, and unleash torpedoes in a coordinated wave. Timing would be everything. The ships were assigned precise firing windows measured in seconds. Communications would be minimal to avoid detection. Each captain memorized the attack sequence until it became instinct. They knew they might not return. Yet something in their commander's confidence steadied them. He had walked their decks, spoken to their crews, and explained not just the risk, but the purpose. They would not be throwing their lives away. They would be rewriting the rules of naval warfare. On the evening of the attack, the sea was deceptively calm. A thin veil of clouds masked the moon, creating pockets of shifting darkness across the water. The commander stood on the bridge, binoculars pressed to his eyes, listening to the hum of engines running at reduced power. Every sound seemed amplified: the creak of metal, the whisper of waves against steel. Radar screens glowed faintly, showing the scattered blips of the enemy formation ahead. According to intelligence, the convoy had grown complacent after weeks without serious contact. Patrol arcs had widened. Escort spacing was uneven. The commander saw opportunity in that complacency. At 1:12 hours, he gave the order to increase speed. Engines roared softly as the ships surged forward. They slipped through a gap between two outer destroyers, so close that some sailors later swore they could hear voices drifting across the water. One flare or stray radar ping would have exposed them, but fortune favoured boldness. By 1:18, they were inside the convoy's protective ring. The commander's heart pounded. but his voice remained calm as he signalled the final approach. In mere minutes, history would hinge on torpedo tubes and steady hands. The first torpedoes launched at 1:20. White trails sliced through black water, invisible to most eyes in the darkness. Seconds later, a flash erupted as the lead transport exploded in a plume of fire. Shock rippled across the convoy. Searchlights flicked on chaotically, beams crisscrossing in confusion. Before the escorts could identify the source, a second and third detonation thundered through the night. The commander's ships were already repositioning, firing again from new angles. This was the heart of his so-called suicidal tactic: overwhelming simultaneity. Rather than concentrate fire on a single target, he had ordered distributed strikes across multiple ships to maximize psychological chaos. Flames leapt from fuel tanks. Ammunition stores detonated in chain reactions. Reactions. Radio transmissions from the convoy dissolved into frantic shouts. Destroyers fired blindly into darkness, their shells splashing harmlessly behind the attackers. In less than 5 minutes, 4 ships were sinking. The commander maintained relentless pressure, refusing to withdraw. Every torpedo was accounted for, every angle exploited. The enemy, stunned and disoriented, struggled to mount a coordinated defense. By 1:27, the ocean had transformed into an inferno. A burning oil spread across the surface, reflecting orange light against low clouds. The attackers moved like phantoms between columns of smoke. Another volley struck a munitions carrier, triggering an explosion so violent it shook nearby ships. Debris rained down, puncturing decks and igniting secondary fires. Panic multiplied as convoy captains feared hidden submarines or a much larger fleet. The commander's gamble relied on this misperception. He had ordered his ships to alter headings dramatically after each launch, creating the illusion of greater numbers. Radar confusion compounded visual chaos. Escorts collided while maneuvering, one crippled by friendly fire in the frenzy. The commander seized the moment, directing a final coordinated salvo. Torpedoes hit 2 tankers and a destroyer within seconds of each other. Water surged into ruptured hulls. Men scrambled for lifeboats amid smoke and screams. 12 ships were either sinking or ablaze. The entire sequence, from first impact to final detonation, had unfolded in just 22 minutes. The convoy's formation was shattered beyond repair. Retreat was as dangerous as the assault. With ammunition nearly spent and enemy gunners regaining composure, the commander signalled withdrawal. His ships accelerated through smoke screens they had deployed moments earlier. Searchlights probed desperately, but the attackers vanished into darkness. Fufford. A few shells landed close enough to send columns of spray over decks, yet none struck home. The gamble that had seemed suicidal was now a stunning triumph. Behind them, the sea burned. Rescue operations struggled amid oil slicks and drifting wreckage. The commander knew pursuit might follow at dawn, so he charted an unpredictable course, changing direction twice before sunrise. By the time enemy aircraft arrived, the raiding force had melted into friendly waters. Not a single ship had been lost. News of the engagement spread rapidly. Intelligence officers initially doubted the scale of destruction. 12 ships in 22 minutes sounded exaggerated, almost mythical. But reconnaissance photographs confirmed the devastation. Twisted hulls half submerged, black smoke spiralling into the sky. The enemy supply chain in that sector was crippled. Fuel, ammunition, and vital reinforcements were lost in a single night. Strategists recalculated operational timelines. Planned offensives were delayed. What had been dismissed as recklessness was now studied as brilliance. The commander's emphasis on speed, coordination, and psychological shock had produced disproportionate results. Naval academies began analyzing the engagement as a case study in asymmetric aggression. The generals who had criticized him faced uncomfortable questions. Why had they underestimated the power of audacity? Why had doctrine become so rigid that innovation was mistaken for insanity? In private meetings, some admitted that fear of failure had clouded their judgment. The commander, however, sought no vindication. He credited his crews, the gunners who calculated angles under pressure, the engineers who coaxed maximum speed from aging engines, the signalmen who maintained silence at crucial moments. He understood that bold plans mean nothing without disciplined execution. For the sailors who participated, the memory never faded. They recalled the eerie calm before impact, the thunder of explosions echoing across water, the sight of towering flames illuminating faces in stark orange light. Many had expected not to survive. Letters written before departure were discovered later, filled with quiet acceptance. Their relief upon returning to port mingled with solemn reflection on lives lost at sea. Victory carried weight. Strategically, the raid reshaped naval thinking. It demonstrated that even in an era dominated by aircraft carriers, surface ships could still deliver decisive blows under the right conditions. Surprise remained a force multiplier. The commander's integration of intelligence, meteorology, and human psychology became a template for future operations. He had proven that calculated risk, grounded in preparation, differs profoundly from blind recklessness. Historians later debated whether luck played a role. Certainly, a single radar detection or stray flare might have doomed the attackers. War often hinges on fragile variables. Yet luck alone cannot explain synchronized torpedo salvos and disciplined maneuvering under fire. The commander's months of rehearsal and analysis had narrowed the margin of chance. He did not eliminate danger. He mastered it in the broader arc of the war. The sinking of 12 ships did not single-handedly determine final victory, but it shifted momentum in that theatre. It bought time, disrupted logistics, and forced the enemy to divert resources to convoy protection. Sometimes wars turn not on grand invasions but on brief, violent episodes that fracture confidence. The phrase "a tactic suicide" faded from conversation, replaced by admiration. Young officers cited the operation as proof that initiative can overcome numerical inferiority. The commander was decorated, though he remained modest in public remarks. He insisted that boldness must always serve strategy, not ego. Years later, veterans gathered to commemorate the night the ocean burned. Stories grew sharper with retelling, the smell of smoke, the roar of engines, the sight of torpedoes streaking forward. For them, the 22 minutes felt both instantaneous and eternal. It was the moment they learned that fear can be harnessed into power. History remembers leaders who dare when others hesitate. This commander's decision, condemned as suicidal, became a testament to the transformative potential of courage guided by intellect. In 22 relentless minutes, he proved that audacity, executed with precision, can overturn assumptions and rewrite the narrative of war.